So the last method that we are going to look at is the stated preference method. So when all the other methods have difficulties or run into issues when trying to estimate these values, right? The most straightforward way is simply just ask people how much are they willing to pay. Ask them what is the value of these resources. Right? The most common method within the stated preference method is the contingent valuation, and this is using survey data to determine people's willingness to accept and willingness to pay. Now remember, these are what economists define as measurements of value. Right? Willingness to accept is how much will, for example, right, how much will a company have to pay you, right, to drill for oil in your backyard, or how much would I have to pay you to take away something. Whereas willingness to pay is how much are you willing to pay to restore an acre of the rainforest. How much are you willing to pay, right, for wildlife restoration. Right. Now, these are hypothetical questions, and what the survey, what the contingent valuation is doing is to get a response to these hypothetical questions. Here's some examples, and now I will never ask you what any of these means, so you don't have to memorize what is a double bound format, what is a single bound format, right? There are an infinite number of ways you can construct a survey. Right? Constructing surveys is as much of an art as it is science. Okay, but I just want to give you some examples here, and also maybe talk about some of the issues and limitations to survey questions. Right, for example, we can start with this open-ended format here. What is the maximum amount you would be willing to pay annually to fund a wetlands protection program? Now, this seems straightforward enough, and the question is trying to get at the maximum willingness to pay, the value of the wetland to this individual who's being asked the question. However, put yourself in the position, right? If you were asked this question randomly, what context do you have, right, to come up with a number, right? Do you know how much a wetland protection program cost, right? Most of us are not in that line of work, right? And so, how would you even come up with, how much are you willing to pay? Now, it shouldn't matter, right? Because ultimately, we're asking how much are you willing to pay, but if I ask you how much are you willing to pay for an iPhone, your source of reference is going to be what is the market price of an iPhone. That is simply inevitable, right? That's simply inevitable that people will refer to. People need a point of reference. Okay, so we can say, well, let's give them some reference then. Single bound format down here. So will you be willing to pay $75 annually? Okay, so now there's some reference, and that's a yes or no question. Okay, now, all right, and maybe, right, you can argue then okay, aren't we kind of leading the people that we're surveying, right? And yes, we are, right? This is unfortunately that's going to be a critique of this. Okay, so let's suppose that that's not an issue and they answer yes. What can we conclude from that? If an individual answers yes, that means, right, their value of the wetland is at least $75. We still don't know, right, what is the maximum willingness to pay, right? What is the actual value, right, that the wetland is to these people, right? And then if they answer no, right, then all we know is that the value of the wetland is below $75. Okay, we can ask a double bound format. Okay, so if we switch to this one, if they say yes, then we ask a follow-up question: will you be willing to pay $150? Now, if they say no to this second question, okay, then we have a range of what the value is for that individual. Is between $75 and $150. Okay, that is the value of the wetland to that individual. Right? If they answer no, then we'll ask a follow-up question. If they answer yes to this, then we can conclude that the value of the wetland is between $40 and $75. Okay, and theoretically, you could continue with this process and ultimately, right, get to the value, right? But then, how responsive will people be once you ask them 3 or 4 of these type of questions, right? So there's a limitation here, and it's okay to be skeptical of the process, right? And so we can try the multi-bound format and just throw all these numbers, right, at individual. Okay, but it seems kind of sketchy, right? And it's okay to be skeptical, but unfortunately, right, for a lot of the values, right, if we don't have enough data to use the other methods, this might be the only way. Okay. So this method was used during the Exxon Valdez oil spill, 1989, okay, and the government wanted to hold ExxonMobil accountable, so there was a survey done using contingent valuation to see what was the value, right, of or the cost of the oil spill, right? And that amount came to 2.8 billion. Okay, Exxon settled for 1 billion, and this is after spending 2.2 billion on cleanup. Right, and just on a side note, right, they motivated that the event motivated the Oil Pollutions Act of 1990, right, where damage assessment, right, instead of looking at willingness to pay, we're looking at ecological terms such as how many number of fish killed, how many otters were destroyed, or how many wetlands were destroyed. Okay. But even for this, right, we still ran into the problem: what is the value of a wetland? What is the value of otters? Okay. So that is still a very difficult question to answer. All right. So, is the stated preference method as accurate as the revealed preference method? What is the advantage? Now, short answer is no. Okay. Hypothetical questions leads to hypothetical answers. Okay. The people answering these questions they're answering it knowingly that they don't actually have to pay. So we have to be skeptical of how seriously are they taking these, how they're taking these questions. And second, or not second, sorry. The advantage, however, is simply an easy way to estimate non-use values. Okay, so all the other methods, right, doesn't adequately estimate non-use values. So this might be the only way. Right? Actually, this is an easy way to estimate all values. Right? Direct use or non-use values. Stated preference is a simple and straightforward way to estimate all that. Now, what are some ethical issues with contingent valuation? So keep in mind, perception value is related to socioeconomic status. Even though these are hypothetical questions, when you ask, the willingness to pay, right? People will reference, right, their own income, right? So if you ask a poor person or people from poor communities how much are they willing to pay, regardless if they actually understand of what if they actually have to pay, they're going to use their income as reference. Okay, I'll show you an example. This is not a definitive proof whatsoever, but this I hope this gives some consideration, right, to that idea, or to the problem with a perception based on socioeconomic value. So, for example, we have a lot of contingent valuation done here. These are just collections of surveys. Right? And so, for example, right, you take a look at Norway, right? The increased forest reserve. So now for Norwegians, they're willing to pay $260 to $300 one-time payment to increase forest reserves. Okay, and I want to compare that to Kenya, say. Right? So Kenya is a developing country, and water contamination is a serious issue. Right? So water purification filters, a one-time payment, the maximum that they're willing to pay is $17 to $27. Now, I don't think it will be fair to conclude that Norwegians care about forests more than Kenyans care about water treatment or clean water. Right? But if we don't consider that, right, if we don't be mindful of that, then just simply looking at the willingness to pay, right, and this is our measurement for value, right, we might be led to that to that conclusion. Okay, all right. So that's all I have. That's all I have for estimation of values. Okay. And we will be applying or mentioning these methods and these concepts again in chapter 7 when we talk about cost and benefit analysis.